everyone, and welcome to this session. We have got a really exciting webinar for you this evening. But let me first of all have a look at this newspaper cutting that I picked up today. In fact, it wasn't a newspaper, but it was actually on the internet. It says, Russia was responsible for hoax calls made to cabinet ministers last week, and an inquiry is underway, Downing Street has confirmed. And this is Defense Secretary Ben Wallace, who revealed that he was video called by an imposter posing as Ukrainian Prime Minister. Now, I don't know if you have received calls from the Ukrainian Prime Minister too. And I mean, you know, I wonder, is that a hoax or is it fake news? Well, fake news is definitely a huge subject at the moment, isn't it? And the people you see tonight, by the way, hopefully anyway, are not fakes, but real. My name is Dalim, and I'm the chairman of two great groups within the British Computer Society, which is the Chartered Institute for IT in the UK. And these groups are the North London branch and the Central London branch. Lots of incredible colleagues with incredible talents, all IT related. It's a world of IT at the moment, and there is so much happening. Most of it good, some of it not so good. But we in the BCS try to bring you a measured view of what's happening. And I have a number of super colleagues. We run a number of initiatives within our two groups. And tonight, you'll see the first example of the FE.HE initiative. That stands for Higher Education IT. And the leader of the FE.HE initiative is Dr. Hisham Abugrad. And I'm very pleased to welcome Hisham here today. Hisham, please tell us more about the subject this evening and introduce our great presenter. Over to you, Hisham.
Thank you very much, Dalim. Thank you everyone for attending this webinar, and special thanks to Dr. Fadi Safieddine, who actually accepted to be here and talk about fake news today. I'm pleased actually about this initiative, Higher Education IT, where we're going to discuss so many issues, important issues in IT with the BCS communities, and I'm looking forward for more webinars actually, and hopefully even in the future we may actually welcome Dr. Fadi again, maybe. But today we are going to have his webinar first, maybe webinar about fake news on social media. Dr. Fadi actually is a senior lecturer at University of East London. He works for the School of Architecture, Computing and Engineering. Actually, he has many areas of research and teaching. He's contributing to higher education for decades now, and I'm not going to say more. I think Dr. Fadi is there, and hopefully, Dr. Fadi, you can actually introduce yourself and start your webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hisham, and thank you for the great introduction. Yes, it's a pleasure. It was a big pleasure when it was suggested for me to run a webinar about fake news. It's a topic that's of a huge interest for me. This goes back to 2015 when I started looking into it, and my first publication was back in 2016. And it's always a delight to talk about this. I have a lot of passion about the subject. So without waiting too much, let's get started with our presentation today. So the topic is fake news on social media, and 6 years since the outcry of 2016. Just making sure this is working, sorry. All right, so the presentation content is I'm going to start by talking briefly about what is fake news. I'm going to present few facts from social media and the news of what's happened. I'm going to refer to the definition. I'm going to have a little bit of a fun experiment here where I want you at home or wherever you're watching it from your offices to spot whether these are fake news or not before I tell you the answers. I'm going to briefly present the research track so far that I have on this topic with a brief review of the fake news literature, so we have a background knowledge of the topic. And then we're going to move into the challenges of fake news. We're going to look at the most recent work I've done with regard to fake news when it comes to COVID, Ukraine, and the US presidential election of 2020 and its implication for 2024. We're going to look briefly on some of the approaches that have been put forward to fighting fake news and what's coming next. And then we have a Q&A section. My understanding is that you all have a part on your screen where you can write questions. So please write your questions as we progress, and Dr. Hisham will read them back at the end. So some key facts. I know some of it might seem obvious to many of you here. Social media has become a major source of information. I review like several papers every month on fake news because I'm a reviewer and I keep reading it again and again, and it sounds like almost so repetitive, but it is a fact that we rely a lot on social media for our news. Fake news is defined, and we have to be very careful there, as reserved for cases of deliberate presentation of false or misleading claims as news where they are misleading by design. So I'm sorry to say those hoax phone calls that were mentioned at the beginning do not actually come under the category of fake news. Fake news has to be a piece of information presented as a fact, as a piece of news. Now, it can intermingle a little bit with misinformation because many times we see pieces of articles online that are giving us information, but they're misleading. Yes, we can, but the actual specification of fake news is that it's presented as something of a news. It could come in a form of an article, it could come in a form of a video, but it's presented as a fact and a piece of news, maybe more recent news, and so on and so forth. It's a collaboration work with Queen Mary, University of London, and the American University of the Middle East in Kuwait. To reflect on that, this is one of the publications we did last year where it was published in the journal of, sorry, I forgot the name now of the journal of, it has something related to social media. We did a study of higher education students at Queen Mary, where we found that 40% of the students do not rely on traditional news outlets to check the news. So they don't use TV, they don't use radio, they don't even open a newspaper. Even on the internet, they don't look at news web pages. They do rely only on social media. And that's quite worrying. Of them, 53% did not think that fake news is a problem. They see it as a part of life, and yet sometimes if they fall for it, it's not a big deal. And that's actually very concerning as well. And this is where we start with, as why is fake news a problem, is because for a big part and a big portion of our population, from every age group, maybe this is slightly a bigger proportion here, they rely on social media for their news. And I mean, from Facebook, which is now considered old generation, to Instagram and TikTok and Twitter as a source of news. And here are some examples I thought I'll run through with you and see if you can detect, but just by looking at them, if this sounds like true or false. Some of them are true, some of them are fake. Try to see whether you would fall for some of these kind of articles that were shared. And these are actually taken from social media being shared as news. So this was a picture reported from Nepal back in 2015. And it says, the haunting picture shared during the Nepal earthquake. Now, why should I blame you if you think it's true, or why should I blame you if you think it's fake? There's not a lot you can go with other than this looks like true, where in fact it's fake. Okay, and that is the challenge that we get. It's actually taken from Vietnam 2007. This kind of fake news is what we call image displacement. So they put a picture there that may look from that event, but really if it's from a very different event. And this was shared like over 1 million times, and it was actually taken as a photography, a casual walk by a photographer, and there was nothing to it. So there was nothing to do with the earthquake. What about this picture? Now, this was heavily shared on social media for a long time, claiming that you can get rid of fourth stage cancer by using baking soda, and that and the advice that came with it is to terminate whatever chemotherapy or whatever therapy they're telling you. They're all liars, they're all pharmaceutical companies trying to take your money, and that you should use baking soda. That was actually quite rife before 2016 on social media, and of course that's fake. Then we look at this picture. So this is a picture that was shared in the aftermath of the terrorist attack in Paris. And it showed empty streets. And you can see the written there, Paris after the terrorist attack. So what do you think? Fake or true? And again, it is challenging. It looks true, there's empty street, but it's actually fake. This was from a project by a photographer saying a world with, that is empty. If one day the world empties from humans, how it's going to look. Someone picked up that picture and shared it as fake news. What about this one? This is an angry professor emails 400 students who did not attend their English lecture. I wouldn't say this ever happens in my class. Yeah, that will never happen to me. I always have lots of students there. But what do you think? Does that sound real or fake? Well, actually, this is true. This is one case that was true. But when you dig into the background to it, those 400 students, the reason why they didn't show up, it was half term, and this lecture was optional. Okay, so, and it was reported in the news, and it's actually verified and true. So there's a whole research track, as I said at the beginning, that goes back to 2016, my first publication. And this is actually not completely up to date. I still have a few more in 2021. But the point is, we have a full track of research, and I put these numbers here because I'm going to cite them as we go through a quick review of the literature review. So fake news has been around for a very long time. Before the internet, we had fake news. News was being reported, but at the time it was we used to classify it more as propaganda. And propaganda is a little bit different than fake news. Propaganda, like now what's happening in Russia, they just don't talk about what's happening and focus on one side that may include some acting or exaggeration, but that has existed for a very long time, okay? So it's a slightly different category of fake news, but it is still in the realm of fake news. But you can't say because they're not talking about it, then it's fake news. That's not the case. That's a form of propaganda. So fake news analysis of fake news started as early as 2013, where they looked at how rumors spread from one person to another, from one group to another, and how it spread all over around, enhanced by the use of social media. Social media was basically the steroids for fake news. It just allowed the sharing, where in the past, if you wanted to say a rumor or spread a lie, you just said to your friend, and your friend sent it to another, spoke to another friend, or sent an email or something. It took too long to spread from one person to another. But what happened is that when social media came around, it just allowed it to explode a lot faster. The sharing, the liking, the unverifying spread of these posts. And I need to stop here for 1 second on the philosophy of pre-2016 that many people now kind of forget about it. In the era of pre-2016, social medias were accused again and again of allowing fake news to spread. They didn't call it fake news, they called it misinformation, especially in the aftermath of the Arab Spring. There was a lot of concerns being raised, but social media stood their ground at the time, based mostly on the American principle of freedom of speech and on the fact that let everyone debate and the truth will come through. So every election, there was people who are going to spread some lies and spread rumors and fake news, but don't worry about it. We believe in this ideal world whereby if we let things flow, the truth will come through, the truth will win, so to say. So that was the initial assumption. When we started looking at fake news back in 2015-16, I was at the time working for the American University of the Middle East. We start identifying key variables about sharing, about reporting, about people validating the news or not validating the news. And I've quickly noticed something. It was like the spread of viruses, because when viruses spread, some people pass it on, some people don't. Some people take medicine, some people self-isolate like we had during COVID, and some people have natural immunity, meaning they see the news and they don't listen to it, they don't share it. So we start looking at these variables, and our initial simulation was in 2D. We quickly realized that actually it resembles more diseases, so we started using BioExpress, a software designed by Edinburgh University for modeling the spread of diseases. And we found many of the variables there are very consistent with the kind of variables that we're looking for to model the spread of fake news, in the sense that we always have a starting point, and sometimes the R number, now we have learned all about the R number from COVID, the R number could be very high, meaning there's lots of people catching it and passing it on because it's a major news, or the R number could be small and slowly it spreads. But either way, the sooner that people start noticing that this is fake, i.e. they start seeing it as a disease, they start taking medicine for it, they start vaccinating for it, and there's a backlash to it, the sooner it can stop. But in all of them, there was a big challenge in the fact that social media was providing making it too easy for them to spread and expand. And one of the key things we identified in this paper, so again, these numbers will refer to the papers I mentioned at the beginning. One of the things that also really shocked us is the impact of what we call social media groups or news groups, whereby if you have a big group of followers, so you have like an influencer, could be, who have millions of followers, and then they start the fake news, then it didn't start from one, it started from 1 million. And let's say only 200,000 of them were online at the time, not always 1 million of them. It just exploded. It just exploded in a way that it was nearly impossible to stop. And I say nearly impossible to stop because initially we thought one of the biggest measures to stop it is to counter it with facts. And we found that we need 30% of the people who are using social media to be able to validate this news will be able to stop it. So if we get 30% of people who read the news, not all the people, maybe 70% never want to validate, but if we only get 30% of people to validate the news, we can stop it spreading. So we can have those immunized people, what a term we got to hear about during COVID, which is mass immunity or herd immunity. Yeah. So the herd immunity initially we thought was 30%, and then it stops it spreading. But when we have 1 million followers, something like that, a big group, and then it explodes, we found you needed 54%. So that made it a lot harder in the simulation to really stop the spread of this fake news. We also looked at if the original source identified that this is fake news and admitted it's fake news. So let's say the BBC by mistake, or we have always occasional ITV and stuff, they post something and then realize it's a mistake and they retract it, then you only need 9% of people after that to stop it. So we were playing with all these variables, but you can see just from this number, the number 54, that it's a huge challenge when you have an influencer or a big group that's spreading fake news. And I'm sensing many of you are now starting to relate it to some examples where we had, for instance, with Donald Trump pushing an agenda that was very, very hard for social media to control. And that's because it's just impossible to get that number of people to validate and check that claim before they share it. So you can see from the diagrams here, we were playing with different simulation about the spread. The other thing we went into is we were trying to identify every possible variable part of these simulations to make sure we cover everything. So we did also almost, I would call, a meta study in this study number 13, of every publication and all the variables they identified. And we went through all of them to try to identify what is the most critical variable in all this equation. And it wasn't too much of a surprise, I have to say. It was the filter bubble. The filter bubble was a huge, steroid in the spread of fake news. So what is the filter bubble? The filter bubble was introduced by social media as a way to encourage marketing. So I don't know how many of you, when you were opening your Facebooks, you would see they're advertising, for instance, shirts with your age on it, saying people who are born this year are cool or something like that, or knowing where your origin from. So they would advertise stuff that of your interest. If you like cycling, if you like sports, you like football, they were all while you're scrolling through social media, it was targeting you with the material you want to see and also marketing that you want to see. So this is where the filter bubble initially happened. And this is why I say intended initially as a marketing purpose. So whereby your demographics dictated what kind of material you could see. And you can see initially how this is quite innocent. There's not a lot to it. It's a typical marketing approach that we'd expect in any business, where they want to keep you online and so on and so forth. But there was two dangerous sides to this approach. And this is what I always say is when businesses do not invest enough time looking at ethical, legal, and considerations. So, if they don't look at the implications of what they're doing, by the time they realize, it'll be too late. So from one side, this created filter bubbles, this environment bubble, where some people were seeing too much of things they shouldn't be. So let's say, for instance, you spend maybe a minute or two looking at the idea of what do anti-vaxxers say, and suddenly the system classifies you as an anti-vaxxer, and then you were bombarded with all the groups and the posts by anti-vaxxers, and there's almost a process of brainwashing involved in the way this has worked. But also from a political point of view, because they accumulated this data, they made it available for companies. So when we look at Cambridge Analytica, and I was one of the people who, while I was outraged by what they've done, I couldn't see how could they have not done it. The tools were given to them. Someone hands you the tools and say, go use it. Of course they were going to use it. And the Trump campaign were clever, if anything, to use it. Why wouldn't they use it? But here's how the filter bubble was used. So what we now learn is that the post, for instance, that said Pope Francis endorses Donald Trump, when it was sent on social media, it was sent in a filter bubble that only viewers with Catholic view, who are devoted, who are religious, can see it. So much so that if they shared it with their friends, if they shared it on their wall, as it's called on Facebook, And if they have friends on their Facebook who are Protestant or liberal or Muslims, they don't see it. So I want you to imagine this. So I'm sharing it to all my friends, but only the Catholics ones can see it. That was the dangerous part of the filter bubble. So the fake news kept spreading, 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 and no one is actually saying, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. And more so, it seems to be the tactic of playing two parts against that have completely different views and sending them posts that only they can see. So the hot topic of back 2016 was gay marriage in the USA. So the Donald Trump campaign, and I want you to take a second to imagine this. We're sending posts from one side saying Donald Trump is against gay marriage and he will never ever agree to it, tagged with only people who have religious views and conservative views, regardless of their religion. And then from the other side, Donald Trump carrying a rainbow flag in support of LGBT rights, targeting the liberals, and so on and so forth. That was the dangerous thing about this filter bubble. And again, if one of them shares to the other person, they don't see it. It's almost like marketing people down to the person. And that was the element there. By the way, this screenshot comes from my book about fake news. In one of the analyses, we were looking at the filter bubbles. So social media had a shock back in 2016, be that in the aftermath of the Brexit vote, where there was lots of accusation of fake news and what you call the bots, online bots that were used to push trends of articles. There was also a lot of accusation about what happened in the USA, and that principle that they were holding on to for a very long time suddenly shattered. They realized they can't continue to be a playground for misuse, and including in that fake news. So social media reacted, and in one of the papers we looked at how to stop misinformation, social media approach versus sorry, my approach, which I'll mention at the end of this session. So you can see social media has reacted. So traditionally they already have ways to cover what we call violent graphic, but now they have ways to cover false information. So they still hold, and in a way I actually respect that. They still hold to the idea that we do not want to censor the platform, but we'll point out when false news is being shared or damaging images or sensitive images are done online. And so social media, at least Facebook in that aspect, has reacted. The other thing not mentioned here is that they closed all what they considered fake profiles. They also closed many of these groups that were set up intentionally to disseminate misinformation and fake news. They were very, very aggressive. The report back from 2018 is that they closed as much as 2 billion accounts, and that's based on their report press. Okay, and I kind of did validation on how that works. The issues remained, and we report that in several publications, is that the process of covering fake news takes too long. So in one of the analysis of how long it takes on average, and at best, is 3 days. And unless this has been already identified in a slightly different format, it could be a little bit faster. But we all know in an election, 3 days is a lot of time for fake news to spread, by then the damage has been done. So while they have tried, it still has some of its limitations. So what's the solution? They've been throwing lots of solutions there. I mentioned the issue of relying on influencers, but that has proved to be less productive. We saw during the US election at the time of Hillary Clinton, every celebrity stood with her, every celebrity tried to fight the fake news that was being thrown at the time. It did not succeed. And we saw that also during the Brexit. Influencers actually sometimes can be counterproductive, and that's the reality of it. Because for people who see, or I classify them as rebellious, or they don't trust authority. They find influencers as collaborators of the authority. So sometimes it's actually quite counterproductive. Educating the masses is a very, very good point, but it takes far too long. And we just saw, just from 2 years ago, that our higher education students do not seem to see a problem with it. And also not reported in there, but it's reported in the publication itself. 30% of the students failed to identify fake posts when we tested them. And worse, more concerning, I would say, is that 27% of them could not identify truthful posts. So we gave them something factual and they still couldn't identify it. There's the idea of using algorithm and artificial intelligence to identify fake news. That is promising, but also has a big risk of of censorship. And this is a very sensitive issue. Also, algorithms do get things wrong. And like anything else, if you end up censoring something that's truthful, it's going to be very harmful for your platform. The third-party checkers seems to be so far the best solution we have, but it has its limitation as it takes far too long to come back with an answer. I can give you a personal experience. I reported 2 fake news on Facebook shared by a relative who is pro-Russian in a way, and even though they're clearly fake, but they're written in French, the third-party checkers have still not come back to block these articles. So, and this is, I'm speaking about more than 5 days ago. So that's the challenge that we have with third-party checkers. So I did an experiment back in 2018 to test how well the AI system by Facebook is, and I was quite impressed. So testing the limit, I created fake profiles and start sending messages, nothing, just spamming Arab social media with messages that were completely unrelated. And I was detected within 3 weeks and closed. So then I created another one and I got detected within 1 week. I created another one, I got detected within 24 hours. And in the 4th attempt, they closed me within 30 minutes. And keep in mind, I was changing my IP address. I was changing the machine. So the only thing I could say is that they were now localizing me by my location, because I can't think of anything else. I've changed my IP address, I've changed my internet provider, I changed the machine, and they still knew I was fake and closed me very quickly, which throws another ethical consideration there about what's going on. And also, when they closed those 2 billion profiles that they classified as fake, the criteria that was used is whether they have a real face photo and a real name. The problem is, by doing so, they actually closed lots of genuine profiles. For example, there were people who were not putting their faces or their real name because either they're hiding from an abusive partner, they've adopted a child, and they were asked by the local authorities not to put their name online and their picture so they don't get traced by the biological parent. You have activists, political activists in third world countries who want to talk freely without risk of prosecution. They actually indirectly shut down free speech in many third world countries, including the Middle East. So I published this, which ended up being published in the iNews, and several news outlets copied it, and I went on to publish it as a paper as well. So that's that research track there. So a bit of reflection here. So things have moved, things have improved. This is no longer 2015. We have to acknowledge that. And in a recent data review that I did with my colleagues from the American University of the Middle East, we can see significant results where roughly, and I don't have the exact numbers still, because I didn't do it at the time, but I took it from other papers, 30% of the news that was reported during Brexit was identified as fake news. When we looked at COVID, the numbers were significantly below. And surprisingly, Facebook actually was the least with the sharing of fake news on COVID. It was 4.6%. you have to put an asterisk there and say we only looked at 115 articles or posts shared about about COVID in each of every one of these outlets. The worst one was Twitter, and the one after that was TikTok. TikTok is more challenging because many times it was someone talking and then sharing a bit of news in the article in the background and then going on, which made it really hard because then we have to look at that article and see whether what it's saying is true or not. And as you imagine, lots of anti-vaxxers see this as a perfect platform because it's a lot harder to be detected. So with that in mind, since we can see things have improved and the data shows that we have improved, at least social media has improved in detecting fake news, can we say we have won? Can we actually claim this is it? We don't have to worry about fake news? Well, I'm going to run a few considerations here. We're going to look whether Biden winning in 2020 is a win against fake news. We're also going to look at what's happening at the moment in Ukraine and then reflect whether there's a shift, there's a shifting battles there. So let's reflect a little bit on what we have said. We said that social media has learned a lot of things and news outlets have become a lot more careful on what they share because they do not want to be labeled as fake news. It's very embarrassing now. Back in the days, if BBC or Sky News reports something, it was fake, it was easy to apologize or forget or move on. Now it's too embarrassing, so they're a little bit more aware. I warned back in several of my papers that yes, social media is reacting, but please believe that those who support fake news will not give up that right. That's like the most valuable thing for them. That's the one that helped them win elections and referendum. They are not just going to simply say, oh, okay, now you found a way to slow us down and stop us, we're going to give up. So where did the battlefield go? And we're speaking about the US election 2020. I don't know how many of you remember this, but everything they kept saying in the news is that Florida is the key one. Whoever wins Florida wins the US election. So the battlefield was Florida. I mean, I was following the news very carefully, trying to cross-check always what's happening with fake news. Sorry, I pressed the wrong button there. So why is Florida the battlefield? Because it's always very close. We're going to see in a second the statistics. Sorry. And it has a very high electoral votes. 29 is considered very high there. So typically you would imagine that this will be a very important battlefield. And because the Trump campaign looked at these facts. So if we look at the last 80 years, whoever won Florida won the US election with only one exception, 1992. And I heard that in the news. It's not me who figured it out because it kept repeated again on CNN and ABC and everyone. They kept saying it again. Fox News, that whoever wins Florida wins the election. And it seems to be the mistake that the Donald Trump campaign did. Because again, they're right. You can see that the percentages are very small, the differences. In fact, Al Gore, it was 0.01. So that was very, very unfortunate. And now there's a claim that actually he did win that race. But you can see the percentages, at least in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elections were very, very close. You have to go back to George Bush and Ronald Reagan, who were very popular to see a higher percentages there. So while following that news, I kept reading again and again that there's something very unusual happening in Florida, not happening anywhere else. People were being bombarded with messages directly to their phones. So multiple news agencies, including the BBC, which I couldn't find the article because it was on the news, like it was a broadcasting, so they never turned it into an article, so I can reference it here. They were going again and again how much people are being bombarded in Florida directly on their phones with messages. And this is the model that turned out to be happening. Since they realized the playground, which is social media, is no longer available, the tactic changed so that they'll use the same demographic data that they were using on social media, knowing your interest, knowing your political persuasion, knowing your fears, your income, your race, your ethnicity, your nationality. They were targeting people directly on their phones with messages of fake news. And this time they were using WhatsApp. This time they were using Viber. This time they were using Telegram. They were using Messenger. So it was a lot harder now to stop it. How can you stop something like this when it's coming directly to your phone with the video link that is showing that Biden supports communism, for instance? And when the interviews were happening, they were showing that actually people were, after watching again and again, starting to believe it. And you have to remember, this has a snowball effect. Not only when they hit you with that message on your phone, but also you end up forwarding it to your friends to say, oh, look, I just saw this about the Biden campaign, or I just saw this about Donald Trump, how amazing he is. And to show that actually this has had an impact, Donald Trump won, and not doubled his difference from 2016, he tripled his difference from 2016. Now, this may not seem significant until you realize one more fact, okay? And this fact, I'm gonna have to stop the slide to show it. Hopefully it will work. And this comes from ABC News, analysis by 538. I have verified that the data is correct. I just didn't have time to create the diagrams for it. So I hope you're able to see the slides all right there. So if we look at the data from 2020, you'll find that from this side you have Donald Trump, and from this side you have Biden, the Democrats. The Democrats shifted up, so they kept those 3 states that were battlefields. Where Donald Trump was dominant, he lost his leads and lost those 2 states, Arizona and Georgia. Where Donald Trump managed to hold on to his places, it got reduced from 2016. They went down. So this was North Carolina and Texas. Even Texas, the margins got smaller. The only state where he was able to increase his margin and triple, in fact, his margin was Florida. And it's the only state he used this tactic on. And which gets me to why this is very important. And it's the warning I've been trying to highlight in again and again. If this tactic is used again in 2014, it's very likely that fake news will be another highlight of another election. And in another work that I'm now working with Dr. Muhammad at University of East London, Dr. Muhammad Amir Hussain, we're going to try to do a simulation of what 2020 would have been if targeted social media fake news was applied in other states, by looking at the demographics, by looking at the characteristics of these states and the vote swings and so on and so forth. We're going to apply 2 conversion tests, one using multiple regressive analysis, statistical one, and one using AI. If I were to guess, I think the results would have been very different. I think the Donald Trump campaign did a tactical mistake of only focusing on Florida, and that is worrying. But we'll see if I'm right or wrong about that. Now, Ukraine, what's happening in Ukraine? And that always tells us what's the state of fake news. There's something good to say that all the traditional misinformation, fake news have happened, but not as much as we expect. I'm actually struggling to find fake news online about Ukraine. When I compare it to what we saw during the Syrian war, when I compare it when I saw it COVID, when I compare it when there is, but not as much. Partly because the target, by the way, also of the fake news is the Ukrainians themselves. So I follow one group called Stop Fake, which is a Ukrainian group. They are bombarded with fake news. So my gut feeling is that the campaign of fake news is actually targeted on Ukrainians and not so much on the West. But this is what we've seen so far. We've seen articles, for instance, and again, they were debunked very quickly. This claim, for instance, that 3 soldiers were killed. Again, and it was despite Russia's fake news, they turned out they were not, and the claim was they were killed in Ukraine. This fake news that Ukraine is exaggerating the injuries and the deaths, and that they're bringing film actors and painting, like you see in the picture there, of people getting killed. Again, this turned out to be from a film set in Ukraine from 2020, so this was also quickly debunked. People now know about fake news, not like back then. People quickly do reverse image check, people quickly stop it. A video, for instance, claiming to be a Russian celebrating invasion of Ukraine turned out to be from Uzbekistan. It's actually from 2017, quickly was debunked. I'm actually ecstatic how quickly when these come up, are being debunked, including this. This was meant to be a deep fake video about the president of Ukraine, Zelensky, surrendering and asking his soldiers to step down. Now that was quickly debunked. And again, I think because it was a mistake to use deep fake on a celebrity or someone or high politician, because people are quickly going to question it, and how easy it is for any news reporter to ring Zelensky and ask, is this true? No, okay, label it as fake immediately, yeah? So, and more so, and this is the other thing that I was very impressed with, is when I'm looking at Facebook, on Instagram and TikTok, this video does not exist. It was taken out very quickly. The only places I could find it is labeled, like you can see there, manipulated, fake news. That's the only place I could find it. I couldn't find it in any place where it's not actually labeled as fake news. So wherever I tried to appear, it was taken down very, very quickly. And that tells me social media has now perfected AI in stopping the spread of fake news. But before we go, let's take a quick look at the video itself and tell me if you would fall for it. I mean, I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, because I actually don't know if this is also like Teams where you can't hear it. But don't care about hearing it, just focus on his face and see if you can see why it's so easy to detect. Okay, just focus on his face and his expressions and tell me what you see.
Шановні захисники, бути президентом виявилося не так вже й легко. Я змушений приймати складні рішення. Спочатку я вирішив повернути Донбас.
Okay, so it didn't take me too long to quickly spot something. His body is not moving. The color of his neck is different to his face. And his facial expression are mechanical. Even the blinking is mechanical. So my view, it was a mistake to even go down that route. That was never going to work. Not with someone who was adamant, never ever to give up. And that was, I think fake news, deep fake can probably work where it's someone you can't trace in a battlefield saying something. That might work. Or manipulating the video to show losses or something, maybe as a deep fake, but this did not work. And to show you, actually, one of our star students is working on deepfake and has created a deepfake video of me myself. And in that video, he actually made me say that I'm canceling my lecture next week. Maybe dangerous territories to go down. But to show you that the manipulation element of it, and the students used AI, teach AI to copy my movement and copy my face, was able to do so. So let me see if I can just quickly show you what he did there. So see if you can see if this is actually better. So this is me doing the telling the student that I'm canceling my class. So it starts somewhere here. Hello, welcome to CN 4003, lesson number 3, Introduction to CSS and HTML2. Now it starts. It's a reminder as well to you all that next week lectures are not running because of the staff strike. So as you know, many of the lectures are not running, including mine. So you can see there, the deep fake is going to become very accessible in the coming years, and we're going to see this happening more often. But my view remains that it's very unlikely that it's going to be used in in a successful way that it was used in 2016. People are more alert, people more are aware of what's happening. So what's common about all these reports from Ukraine is that I was not able to find the fake news, but I was able to find reports of fake news. It was very, very hard. And as I said, it's mostly probably to do with the fact that they're targeting Ukrainians rather than targeting the West. But still, social media was very quick to remove everything. And that shows that we are improving. Although we can't claim just yet we have won the war on fake news, there's still more to come. So I have published last year a book on fake news that discussed the psychology of fake news, the deep fake element, all the work that's been done to simulate fake news, along with Professor Yasmin Ibrahim from Queen Mary University of London. One of the key research I did with American University of the Middle East is what we proposed at the time as an approach that would allow people to validate the news themselves. And we still think this is a very useful tool that could be integrated to any device, including social media messaging. So what is the principle of authentication? Authentication, and that's the last site we're going to take a look at there. If we go back to the same images we saw earlier, is that when we're looking at social media news, we can't usually tell whether it's true or wrong. But what we can do is do a reverse search. And one of the things we could do, if the big tech giants come together and include an option called right-click authenticate. So if we look at this picture from supposedly Nepal, you open it and it says, it goes a reverse image search on the image where it's appeared with an article saying this image has been used in the past as fake, it's actually from Vietnam. That would be a very useful meta-level tool. So for instance, this was used a lot in the Middle East during the Syrian war, where it was claiming that take a look, when Europeans were running away from Europe during World War II, we welcomed you, why you're not welcoming us? And this was shared a lot when I was in Kuwait, but when you click and authenticate, oh sorry, it's not opening, let me try again. It shows that actually this comes from Albania during the 1991 fall of the communism. So that's the approach we think would bypass people who are trying to promote fake news, is to give tools within people's hand, in addition to everything we know about reverse image search, and just make it a little bit easier. It's just a right click, show me where did this come from. And with that, I think we have reached the end of the presentation.
Okay, so I think Hisham is going to come
Yeah,
now.
thank you very much, Dr. Fadi. It was a very good presentation, and I mean, I can see the information that you have provided, which is great, to be honest. Very good information. I am sure that everyone learned a lot from what you have shared with us. There is a question which is actually something you already explained about how you spot, fake news. But Ian asked, are there software or apps out there that can spot deep fakes?
Oh, deep fakes. No, at this point, we don't have that. It was actually one of our star students as well to try to use AI to identify deep fake. That's still a bit of a challenge. What's been done at the moment, whether it's videos or deep fake, because remember, deep fake is still a video, is to take a screenshot of that video and do a reverse image search to find where the video appear, and then you can cross-reference it. So deepfake at the moment, unfortunately, no, there's no specific software that I'm aware of. Maybe there is, I don't know, but as far as I know, there's no specific software for identifying deepfake, and also there's no software for identifying fake videos. So these are videos that are where you can do a reverse search for that video. Where we have reverse search for images, we have reverse search for text. We don't have a reverse search for videos yet that I'm aware of, and as well, we don't have anything for deepfake.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadi. We have some comments, actually 2 comments from Mike Hatterley. Mike, would you like to speak or ask a specific question? I don't know if Mike is around.
If you want to speak, then raise your hand.
Yeah, there.
I don't know how to raise hands as well. This app is new to me, but it was quite easy to use, I have to say.
Hold on one
Okay,
moment.
Mike, actually his mic is not really working. Mike, you can ask, use the chat or the question if you have specific question.
While we're waiting for Mike to write, let me emphasize the issue of social media messaging. WhatsApp has reacted in India, at least one incident, where they restricted the number of sharing of articles to down to 5 people maximum. All it did is slow down the spread of misinformation during the Indian election, but they were not able to stop it completely, and that was a big challenge. Just to add an example there of what WhatsApp has tried to do, and I feel for them, because I don't know what would they have to do to stop the spread of fake news on their platforms. And if they stop it, they have the people want to spread it will use another platform, and that's a challenge as well.
Okay, we have Tony Moore. He asked, do you feel as if fake news was a powerful tool during COVID-19?
No, I would have thought it'll be a lot worse than that. And here's my reason. When you look at the immunization rate in a skeptical countries such as France, it's actually hit 90%. UK is 87%. So as much as they tried to push that narrative, social media was ready for them. And I would say government was ready for them. Many outlets, they pushed the correct narrative, and they blurred down any attempts to spread fake news. But they still, of course, will always find audience for themselves. There is a term, while researching fake news, I came across a term that I loved in a way, because I was getting really frustrated what to call these group of people. This group of people who will always reject all the facts you put for them because they have a belief more than in their reality, more than in the facts. And the term that I found is tribalist. So tribalists are people who will not be swayed by any number of research you present to them. They are stuck in their way. And an experiment was done in the USA on 30 flat earth believers. So these are people who believe that the earth is flat and everything we see is a lie. This is all propagated by NASA and West, and other allies to say that the earth is round. We're not round. We would fall if it was round. And they put all this science that the sun is close to us and it's all made up. And that's based on a minority group of religious belief. But there's 30 people, when they try to convince them in every possible scientific evidence, it just did not sway a single person out of their view, and therefore they're called tribalist. They did try something that some people may not consider necessarily ethical. They tried to mock them through certain facts by showing how ridiculous their view is, and apparently that had actually swayed some of them. So it seems that mockery or making fun of can sometimes be more effective with those people than facts. And it may explain why the likes of Donald Trump were very angry, more angry than if you called him that he is, let's say, call him that he's deluded. If you mocked him like, sorry, I dropped my mouse there. If you mocked him the way Saturday Live Show did, he was more angry about that, and sometimes change his behavior based on what was presented as him being a joke. So that seems to be the mistake that some people do, is that we try too much science. But will it be wise to use mockery? Because it's almost like a form of playground bullying, one would say. So where do you go with that? That's a challenge.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fadi. We have David Boyd. David, would you like to speak, David? No, if David...
If you would like to speak, then raise your hand and we can unmute you. Otherwise, we'll read your question.
Actually, yeah. He doesn't know how.
On my screen, I can't see the hand raising, so I don't know if they can see the hand raising. I can't see it on my screen. I can see the chat. If you write something in the chat, I can see that.
Actually, he said you spoke of writing fake accounts, which were deleted in diminishing amounts of time. I mean, yep. Could it that was recognizing maybe, for example, like fake manuscripts and maybe, I mean, part of fake, maybe other things like maybe manuscripts and maybe other content rather than just social media?
I think the AI, because I saw it learning with me, where it took 3 weeks the first time, and then 1 week, and then 24 hours, and then 30 minutes to find me. The AI was learning from my behavior and pattern that that the profiles I was creating were fake. So I don't think it's a necessarily one thing. There's going to be multiple things. So what I investigated initially is that not having a face photo, and again, if you copy anything off the internet, you'll be easily detected by reverse image search. Not having a real face photo, not having a real name. Also now they're required to have a mobile number. And I believe, because I tried this as well in my third and fourth attempt, I actually went and bought a new SIM card, which I paid £5 for, so that it will make it super hard. And I was using it to connect to the internet. They would know that this is a newly activated number, because I just couldn't understand how quickly. And in the 30-minute experiment, and it's in the paper, I actually didn't do anything. I just created the account and set back. And I thought, maybe if I don't do anything for a week, it's a new machine, it's a new device, new IP address, they will start thinking that I'm real, they block me. So the AI was acting very, very clever in that sense. So I do believe they succeeded in reducing the level of fake news that we were seeing through AI, definitely, but it didn't stop what we still see. So through COVID, and it's never going to be able to stop what we see when you send people directly messages to their phones. So that is, I think, where we should be now focusing.
Okay, Amandos Robert Gulia. Let me. Can you speak, Amandos?
Yes, I can.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Good evening, everyone. I do have a couple of questions for Dr. Fadi regarding the fake news. So one of them would be related to language barriers in other countries. What about the human and resource capacities in lower middle income countries to combat the fake news? And the other question was more related to what was discussed already regarding the Facebook accounts, how Facebook using artificial intelligence will identify the new created accounts and shut them down even quicker based on how many attempts you do. And that would be concerning in how Facebook identifies the user if all the changes were made regarding the details of the account. Wouldn't that be concerning of using the camera, which would be like a last resource? If this would be happening, then be used in fake news research.
Okay, so the first one is, yes, I do actually believe where the other countries where the language is not English, it's a lot slower. I could tell already with the French one, it's significantly slower than the English one. And it depends how many organizations, because you have to remember they're third-party checkers. Facebook refuses to do the check themselves because they don't want to be accused of being a media. So they rely on charities and organizations that are voluntary run, which have to prove their independence, and if they get accused of shutting down free speech, they'll disconnect them, and Facebook pays them indirectly as charitable donations and to check these things. But naturally, they're overwhelmed. And I would imagine third world countries, if it's a country that has a unique language of then it's going to be very, very hard to find these kind of organizations. And also, by the way, just you know, as I said, they're always going to find ways to fight AI. So what I notice is some posts to dodge the AI, because they know AI is looking, for instance, for rude words or keywords like kill, terrorism, and sometimes they're picking up articles that have nothing to do with it. So, for instance, I shared a picture showing an Israeli soldier shooting, pointing at a child and a mother, which was fake, by the way, because it wasn't that proximity close. Someone has it was far away from each other, and someone brought them together. So I shared it on my page saying, this is an example of fake news, by the way, because this is the original photo. This is the and the AI, because it's been trained to detect this, flagged me as sharing fake news. I wasn't sharing it as I'm spreading it. I was sharing it to show that this is fake. You see what I mean? So the AI, unfortunately, is making mistakes. So sometimes people, when they're talking about ISIS and criticizing ISIS, AI was shutting them down because it saw the word ISIS and saw terrorism and saw a flag of the ISIS flag. It's not clever. It's not, you know, as much as we try to say is intelligent, it is artificial intelligence. So it's not always going to get things right, and it's getting actually sometimes wrong, and it's frustrating people a lot with the way it's behaving on social media. So that's one thing to say. In detecting people, I haven't done extensive research on that. I can't tell. There must be people joining Facebook on a daily basis, and they must be getting through. But why in my case? The only thing I could think that they can guess is I was sitting in my house. So I was wondering whether they are, because I don't show my, I didn't allow sharing of my location, I'm using my laptop, there's no GPS device. How did they find me so quickly? I can't explain it. I genuinely can't explain it. So the second part of your question is, I left it open. I did put some question about ethical behavior, but at the end of the day, Facebook never shares this, so we can't really tell. One day it will come out, maybe one day we'll know.
Thank you. Ian maybe wants to speak. His hand is up.
Yes, please go ahead, Ian.
I tried to actually. Oh yeah. Yes, Ian.
Hi everyone.
Yes. Hi.
Good evening, Dr.
Hi.
Fadi. So I have a question. Like, with so many things going on, and especially when you brought the example of President Trump in the deepfake case. So I'm an IT consultant based in the US, and we have problems with our clients, especially dealing with the social media. So I was just wondering, anything that we need to know, like in terms of, let's say, if you are the one in charge of compliance in a corporate setting or small business setting, what are some advice you will give us on deepfakes, dealing with deepfakes? Thank you, sir.
Yes, I mean, we haven't seen examples of it yet, but if deepfake becomes better, and it's still, as you can see, it was easy to detect, to use it in a corporate way could be used, for instance, to create fake reviews, like you see the ones on Facebook, people saying this product, blah, blah, blah. Many times people have to pay money for these influencers and people who look like influencers. Sometimes I don't know who they are, but apparently they look like influencers. The fake could be used that way. So that's the negative aspect of it. Deepfake also could be used in the future in a positive way. So where a celebrity has passed away and you need them in a certain movie, deepfake could be used there. The AI element, what we're learning about, you know, of course they use special effects in films and stuff, but deepfake could be used even more so, the technology behind it, in a positive way. I can't think of a scenario where a corporate business could negatively be impacted unless, for instance, you get the CEO in a deepfake video to admit fraud or something like that, send the shares down, someone take advantage of that. Am I throwing a wild scenario there? But it could be done. It could happen. It happened in a way indirectly, but without the use of deepfake or anything, with Bitcoin, when I forgot the name of the organization itself. I'm not gonna put anything on record because this is being recorded as well, is that they claimed Bitcoin is dead, it's no good, and then when Bitcoin went down, they went and bought tons of shares of Bitcoins, and then it was revealed that they were playing a game. So that could be a scenario, for instance, that could be used in corporate settings in an unethical way, of course. So that's the only two scenarios I can think of misusing deepfake.
Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Olo Solomon asking or saying, in a situation where fewer items are posted online, how does a country like, for example, Nigeria, where tackle misinformation or fake news, especially with the issue of NSARS?
Insults.
SARS. It's a protest against police brutality in Nigeria.
Oh, yeah. I see. Yes, I did start by saying this is very challenging because here's the scenario. Not only you want people who understand the local language, you also want people who will be able to verify that this is true. And where are you going to get that? I mean, some videos are impossible to verify. It's impossible. Some of them, especially at the local level, when someone's reporting something in their village and you do a reverse check on the video and it doesn't exist anywhere else, you can't tell whether this was recorded yesterday or last month. I mean, some things are just really, really hard to prove. And unfortunately, this is what some dictators or people who are in power take advantage of. And it's always been the case, really, that we can't always verify everything. We are just in a time where things are getting a little bit better, and at least it's better than the pre-2016 election, where social media was letting people do whatever they want to do. I think we have improved. Now everyone thinks about fake news when they're looking online. I don't say everyone, sorry, I take my word back. Many people think about fake news when they look online. And if you remember the thing about my simulation, we only need 30% of people in a normal setting. We only need this 30% of people to be accurate. It was 33, but I like to round it. You only need that percentage of people to stop, check, do a reverse check, and then simply say, this is fake, and it stops spreading. And in that simulation, it stopped on the second round of spreading. So there was the source, then the first round spread to the first group of people, and then it went to the second round of people, and it stopped there. It couldn't go beyond that. Every simulation we tried to put the R number high, we put the R numbers low, the vaccinated high, vaccinated low, but it was as long as 33% did some check and said something like this is fake in the comment or something, it was able to stop it to spread. And that is something good now that we look out for it, and more people are looking out for it. The biggest challenge, as I said in the presentation, is when we have an influencer with mass number of people. So you know, I had absolutely no sympathy when Donald Trump was banned from social media, because he had something like 20 million followers, if I'm not mistaken. That's impossible to stop. That's absolutely impossible to stop.
Thank you. We only have Ian. His hand is still there. I don't know if it's a legacy hand or a new hand. Oh, it's a legacy. It looks it's a legacy.
Sorry, I forgot to take it down. Sorry.
It's okay. No,
No,
it's okay. Thank you very much, Ian.
Don't worry, Ian. We want a fake hand.
Yes. Yeah, so thank you very much, Dr. Fadi. Anything before we finish, or anything maybe to add before we finish the webinar?
No, first I would like to extend a big thank you to the BCS and Dalim for arranging this, and I would like to thank you, Dr. Hisham, for a great organization. I hope the audience enjoyed it as much as I did. I said from the beginning, it's a topic I'm highly passionate about it, as you can see, and would I be sad if we eliminate fake news? Absolutely not. I'm just happy to put a dot at the bottom of that. It has impacted people's life. It has impacted, caused problems all around the world. I'm happy to say I have other research areas I'm more than happy to move into. If tomorrow we wake up and fake news is eliminated, the one person who's going to be very happy is Dr. Fadi. Yeah. So just know, I know some people don't like things to stop because suddenly the research is worthless. No. I'm more than happy to see the end of fake news. My interest in it goes beyond just the research. But thank you very much. And I would like to also thank the audience. I can see we had about 54 at some point. So that was really great to see many people joining the session today. So thank you very much.
Yes, many thanks here I got from the audience, and in fact the total at some points was up to like 60 people attended already. The webinar will be launched online as well on our branch channel. And now I'm going to hand to North London branch chair Dalim, to you, Dalim. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was really interesting. And as far as this subject is concerned, I think we have a long way to go, don't you? But
I think so, unfortunately.
yeah, well done, Hisham, for putting this together, and especially Fadi, to you for presenting it. It's been really interesting, and I shall look forward to seeing it spreading on our channel and to see if it gets any fake reviews or fake news attached to it as a result. But let me just close by thanking the audience and inviting everybody, including yourselves, to come to our next event. We're just putting this together at the moment. It's on the 30th of this month, so pretty soon. And it's from another of our initiatives. It's from the Innovation Hubs initiative. And what we have is a topic which is, again, quite topical. It's on the metaverse. So let's talk about the metaverse. We have a panel of people, including somebody very senior from IBM and somebody also from Tech UK, talking about the metaverse. That's on the 30th of March. Not yet available, but will be very soon. Look out for it. Look out for lots of other good things. And thank you very much for participating in this event today. Bye for now.
Bye, everyone. Bye.